people who worked in restaurants. What was the worst customer that you had to deal with? This one guy who basically hated his order so much that he waved me over and told me to put my hand out and proceeded to spit out entirely what was in his mouth into my hand, then tell me to refund him and then make him something else. Edit. I'd like to point out that I was too shocked to really retaliate to what he did at that moment. I don't like confrontation, so I walked away to the bathroom and cleaned my hands for what felt like hours. My coworker saw what happened and told my boss, who kicked him out, and he was no longer allowed back. Anyways, have a great day. I worked in Domino's. I had a guy throw a handful of pennies at me while laughing. The 30-odd cents was my tip. He was mad when I turned around and walked away without picking any of them up. His exact words were, "Oh, my money not good enough for you? Fine, I'll never order Domino's again." I've never had a customer fire themselves like that before. It was great. This old guy who asked if I was included in the order. I'm 17. This happened to me when I was about that age. Some guy asked if I was on the dessert menu. I pretended so hard not to understand him that he actually got embarrassed, left a generous tip, and politely left without another word. Worked in a popular restaurant for a while. We usually have quite a long wait, 30 to 40 minutes waits, during dinner service, and people are told by the hosts about this. There was this lady that got fed up with the wait. After 10 minutes she stormed into the restaurant, stood next to a table of 4 people and literally asked them, "Are you guys done? We've been waiting for a long time now and would like to have the table if you guys are just chatting." Was completely mind blown how people are able to pull something like this in public. A customer ordered one of our daily specials and didn't like it, so instead of complaining to me about the food and letting me offer something else, she complained to my manager about me. This was May of last year. In August of last year, turns out she was one of my college professors for the semester, teaching a management course. She recognized me the first day, but I played it off like I didn't know her. Edit. She did not complain about me to my manager in front of me. I left to go work an event in a different building, and she left a sticky note for me after talking to my boss. I don't know what the sticky note said since I didn't bother to read it. I'll never understand why people make their dislike for a restaurant's food into a bizarre personal grudge against the server. I worked at a place that had good food except for this one dish, steak frite. It was a small hanger steak, cut into strips, served with fries. That's it. The steak was always tough, under-seasoned, and wasn't a lot of food for the money. One day a guy asked me for some recommendations, so I made a couple. He apparently wasn't impressed by my suggestions, so he asked about the steak frite and said, explicitly, that I wouldn't recommend it. So that's what he ordered. After taking a couple of bites, he pushed the plate away, then asked me to call over the manager. He then complained to the manager, not directly about the food, but about me for giving him an awful recommendation. Barista here. Had a guy that regularly came in and ordered a complicated drink. He always finished the order by asking for a finger swirl in the drink. If you gave him a confused look, he would say, "Well, how else am I gonna taste you?" He was the worst. I used to work in a bar that sold very old booze. A drunk man tried to impress his friends by chugging from a bottle of Amaro from the early 60s. He had to pay for the whole thing since his lips touched it and it was useless. Cost him around $800. Our bar was having a private party. A drunk dude walks in and orders a drink. I knew he wasn't with the party based on his attire and that he came in every so often. I told him I couldn't get him a drink. He lost his mind, told me to fuck off, and then wanted to fight me. On his way out he yelled that we should put up signs, as he walked by the signs on the door saying we were closed for a private event. He came in the next day sober and apologized. Way back in the 80s I worked in a restaurant that was a favorite of a celebrity chef of those days, Jeff Smith, the frugal gourmet. Never seen a bigger asshat than that guy. Literally make our servers cry. Nothing was ever right, he was beyond rude and condescending. yet he kept coming back. He had a reputation of being a jerk off camera. Eventually he was disgraced by being outed as a child predator and was quickly forgotten by all. Our restaurant was a good place. Another celebrity chef of the time, Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet, was always a pleasure to have visit. In his day, Graham Kerr had the energy level of Gordon Ramsay, the health consciousness of Paula Deen, and the gleeful euphoria of a man well acquainted with ecstasy. He was fun to watch. After a wedding reception ended at our facility, we were cleaning and I began the cleaning process on our espresso machine. The party was over almost a half hour already. The process takes 12 minutes. People were still there as the party slowly let out and the father of the bride asks me for an espresso. I told him I could get it to him, as we have a strict policy of always trying to satisfy a guest's needs, but the machine was cleaning and it would be done in about 10 minutes. He begins ranting about how much he paid for the wedding and stormed to our banquets manager and told them I refused to make it for him. Manager starts ripping me in front of the guy. I show both of them that the machine is just finishing the cleaning process and it was impossible to make it beforehand. I got suspended for 2 weeks. Oof. Hope you're out of there. Those dirts. Work in a place that is frequented by local families and youth sports teams. On Sundays this one large group of people always come in and they are the worst. The parents drink and ignore their preteens who run around playing games in the entire restaurant, disrupting everyone else. They have tried to walk in a party of 45 during end-of-year sports party season when we are booked solid, and get mad that there isn't enough space for them. And they modify everything like crazy and leave zero in the tip. It's at least once a month the entire group comes in. And weekly for some of the individual families. This is the reason many restaurants have an automatic gratuity on parties above a certain size. One large party can steal a server's entire evening and having them not tip is painful. The worst customer that I ever had was a Catholic priest and some guy he was trying to hit up for donations. The whole meal he was very condescending and demanding. After everything was done, I left the check at the table. He ended up walking out stiffing me not just on the tip but on the entire check. He even stole the leather check holder thing. I reported this to my manager. A couple weeks later, this same guy comes in with about 20 members of his congregation. My manager told him he wasn't welcome in our restaurant after walking out on his previous tab in front of his whole party. They all ended up leaving to go elsewhere. Best manager I've ever had. A homeless guy who came in, actively dripping of blood from his hands, and started screaming at me and threatening me because I wouldn't give him a bakery case item without him paying. He was dripping blood all over the counter and spitting everywhere until I threatened to call the cops. A huge group of clearly rich kids who came in, stole a bunch of drinks, and left the dining room trashed. A guy who demanded I take money from our tip drawer to help him pay for his order and argued with me when I said no. People who would place large orders, or even take home a cake and eat half of it, then flip their shit and demand a refund when they'd find out it was all vegan, even though that fact was well advertised. My friend works at restaurant. A vlogger was shooting a video and since it was allowed within the place nobody troubled her. Apparently she wanted one of those clickbait thumbnails, so she asked my friend to place his face in her breast while she squirted ketchup on herself. My friend refused as he was in a relationship but some other employee agreed to do so. After they shot the thumbnail, she marched in the next day claiming sexual assault. I don't know what happened after that but it did not turn out good for the liar. Bartending in a restaurant a few years ago. There was a private party and one of the guests asked me to plug in his iPhone to listen to a song. No big deal, I did it and he tipped me $20. He left his phone behind the bar and got wasted. When he was leaving I said, "Sir, don't forget about your phone." He threw a beer on me and told me to leave him alone and told me get a real job. Guess who got to keep a nice new iPhone? I had a guy that was a germaphobe and had really bad OCD. He came through before and my coworker didn't want to deal with him. So I went to the drive-thru window after washing my hands. I cashed out the order that was on screen and he reluctantly handed over his card. I gave him the coffee that I cashed him out for. He started yelling at me saying that it was wrong. Apparently the person that took the order forgot to type it in. Unfortunate, but it happens. He started yelling at the co-worker that didn't want to take his order at the window. So instead of just saying that it was the wrong order, getting refunded and being on his way, he stayed in the driveway for 20 minutes telling my co-worker that she was stupid and unprofessional and was unfit to be a supervisor. He kept demanding that we get the phone number of our franchise owner, but apparently the number was wrong and he kept yelling at us. But when we came back to the window after 20 minutes of this, he left. My supervisor went into the back to cry. I felt so bad for her. She's the sweet person. Fast forward less than a month later, he called the store to apologize and the manager made sure that my co-worker never dealt with him again, but he could come in as long as he didn't make a scene. He told the manager that his therapist told him he should apologize. He spent a combined total of 3 hours on the phone with the manager, where he apologized and also blamed us for making him late to his appointment that day. And at the end of the phone call, he asked if we were hiring. Are there any waiters among you? Leave a comment. And subscribe to this channel if you want to see more same videos.